Welcome back to On Texas Basketball. I'm Jeff Howe, joined as always by Jerry Hamilton. Going to get into a big win for Vic Schaefer and the Texas women over LSU and look ahead to Chris Beard's return to the Moody Center on Saturday. Jerry, let's start with that big win for Vic Schaefer and the Texas women. Look, it's always good for Texas to get a win over a Kim Mulkey coach team. 77-64 over LSU. Jerry, Texas pulled away in the second half, and one of the big storylines for me in this game, but shout out to Rory Harmon for setting the school's steals record. She had the assist record, now she's got the steals record. But Jerry, Aaliyah Crump, this team kind of wasn't the same without her when she was out injured. Now that she's back, you mentioned it in the offseason that even as a freshman, she was going to give this team a perimeter presence that they hadn't had. And now that we're seeing this team complete, Jerry, there's no question she's had that kind of impact on this team where she may be the missing piece for this whole thing.
I think she may well be, and she is, because it gives them enough scoring punch to win these games against number 1, number 2 seed level teams. They got a tough stretch then coming up SEC play. But when you get into the NCAA tournament, if you come up against a hot shooting team and they go put up 75 points on your really good Vic Schaefer defense, can you go score 76? Can you go score 80 when you need to? And I think she gives Texas that ability because she makes Madison Booker's job easier. Then, look, it gives Vic flexibility. He can run out an offensive team with Jordan Lee, Crump, and Madison Booker and Harmon on the court at the same time. That is something Texas hasn't had under Vic before. Because Aaliyah Crump, she's going to be a WNBA draft pick. She's going to be a really good player. And she can go score on her own. She can score within an offensive set. And then, as she showed last night, she can go score on her own when the time comes for that, too, when you got to go get a shot. Well, that gives Texas 2 6-foot-plus wing players, guards, that can go get their own shot against really good defenders. And Texas has needed that, and that's what she brings. And then, look, if Vic goes with a more defensive lineup and goes with a bigger lineup with Justice Carlton and Oldacre, you can rotate Lee and Crump, so you always have that secondary scoring presence on the court with a high-level scoring presence on the court with Madison Booker. When Crump was out, and then when Lee wasn't in the game, Texas struggled in that regard, having that other score because, like the loss at LSU, they was 70-65. Anybody think they scored more than 65 with Crump? I'll raise my hand. Of course they did. She was out. She was injured in that game, but she gives Vic lineup flexibility, and she gives him the option to have 3 true perimeter scoring threats on the court at the same time when the game calls for that in Lee, Crump, and Booker. Not that Harmon's not, but she is kind of inside 12-foot, 14-foot score. All 3 can play outside 15 feet, talking about Booker, Lee, and Crump.
Yeah, just hearing from Vic the last few weeks, he had no doubt with the impact Aaliyah Crump was going to have when she was healthy. He said if Justice Carlton can get right and they can find a role for her, this team's going to be tough to beat. And, Jerry, you look at the roster they've got and you start looking at the resume. They're 8-2 this year against ranked opponents, 4 wins over teams currently in the AP top 10. They've beaten UCLA, South Carolina, LSU, and Oklahoma. Jerry, you wrote about it over on TexasFootball.com. Texas at this point, there is work still to be done. Yeah. But, Jerry, this does look like a team that's gunning for a number 1 seed in the tournament again.
Yeah, I think that's why last night, the game Thursday night was huge, because you didn't want 2 losses to LSU on your resume, because then if it's for that last 1 seed line spot, LSU is going to get it over you more than likely because they beat you twice. That was a huge win last night. And so Texas is now split with South Carolina, even though one was non-con. They split, obviously, with LSU. Like you said, they have beat UCLA. They beat some really good teams out of conference play. So at 22-2, with those wins, they are a strong number 1 seed right now. Now, anything can happen because, like you just said, they have a tough road coming up. I mean, they got Kentucky on the 9th. That's number 16 in NCAA.net. Then they're on the road the following week at Vanderbilt and Tennessee. Yeah. I mean, those are 2 tough road games. Vanderbilt 8 in NCAA.net, Tennessee 19. Then Arkansas, not as tough of a game. But then Mississippi State 35 in NCAA.net, Georgia 34 in NCAA.net, and at Alabama in the regular season 25 in NCAA.net. So they only have 1 team left of their 7 games that's not going to be an NCAA tournament team, and that's Arkansas. That is a tough ending stretch and a great basketball conference. But that win over Oklahoma and that win over LSU has positioned Texas, if they close strong, and then obviously the SEC tournament can matter if somebody goes on a big run. But right now, Texas is a solid 1 seed.
But Jerry, just want to point out real quick on that schedule. It's 3 road games in a week. It's Vanderbilt on a Thursday, Tennessee on a Sunday, and then Thursday the 19th. Yeah, they go to Fayetteville, and Arkansas is the most winnable game on that schedule. But that's a game that, because of the ice storm, was moved to that Thursday. So when you just talk about the totality of an SEC schedule and getting your rest, that all of a sudden becomes a really big deal when you look at maybe you get to the semifinals of an SEC tournament. You're probably playing LSU again, or a South Carolina, or an Oklahoma. So do you have enough gas in the tank at that point with all those road trips right there?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, that adds another February game, right? I mean, so to your point, Jeff, that's 3 road games in a row in a 7-day period of time. That, I don't care how athletic you are, how good you are, that takes a toll on your legs. So that's travel, right? Because you're flying to they'll stay in Tennessee February 12th. They're not going to fly to Vanderbilt, turn around, come home, and then fly to Knoxville on the 15th. So they'll stay in Tennessee. That helps a little bit on the travel, but it doesn't help on the legs. Their legs are going to be tested. But that, again, Aaliyah Crump coming back, that's a big deal. So now you can start to disperse minutes a little differently with this Texas team and get through that stretch, especially at the Arkansas game.
Jerry, let's go to the men's game against Ole Miss on Saturday. And again, big thank you to Sean Miller for joining us here on the channel earlier this week, coming off of the wins over Oklahoma and the really good stretch that Texas had. Looking to win a 3rd conference game in a row. And Chris Beard coming back to Moody Center. Jerry, you've been as close to this program over the last 2+ decades as anybody roaming this mortal earth. And it's not so much about what Chris Beard did. And this is kind of where I'm at as he gets ready to come back and we drudge up all this stuff. It's not about what he did. It's about what we expected was about to happen with his tenure. And that Elite 8 team was a really good team, but you really think about it, man, if he had really gotten the most out of that team, I don't know, Jerry, if they beat UConn, but that's probably a Final Four team if Chris Beard can maximize that team.
Yeah, easily. I would say easily is. And who knows against UConn? Obviously, that would have been Dylan Dessou's health, and it's hard to kind of go back in time and break that down. But that year was in Houston in the Final Four, and you never know what happens. But look, I mean, Chris Beard was it was at a point where recruiting was about to ascend in a massive, straight vertical way. I mean, looking back on that, I mean, Liam McNeely was close to committing to Texas right when that happened. Eves Messi was going to go to Texas, not Baylor, right when all that happened. I mean, Texas was in an unbelievable position. So yeah, and I think, look, it's the thing with that too is he's one of Texas's own. I mean, he's a Texas grad, and everybody knew this was his dream job. And to see that thing go up in flames like it did, that's a tough one to swallow, because the fan base was very excited about Chris Beard, because obviously he came from Tech and everything that came with that too. It created just a fervor of excitement and feelings from both sides, and it very similar to Schloss from A&M to Texas in a way, except Schloss is in a Texas grad. So yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what the fans' reaction is going to be Saturday in Moody. I think, and look, Beard's had a tough season. Yeah. This will be 6 of 7 games on the road. 6 of the last 7 games on the road in a major basketball conference. That should never happen. So if somebody got hosed on a schedule, it's Ole Miss this year, but he would give anything to win this game Saturday. Anything to win this game. And this is a huge game for Texas, though, because, look, we mentioned it. They need to get 1 road game last week, and they did. And if they can get both these home games this week, then suddenly, you're over 500 in SEC play. And after the first 2 games of the year, I'm not sure people saw that even a possibility. But if you can win that game Saturday, suddenly you're 15-9 and 6-5, and you go to Missouri. Then you have LSU at home the next week. So this is a massive game for Texas, because then if they can win it and you get to 6-5 in SEC play, at Missouri is a winnable game. I'm not saying they are. They're not even going to be the favorites, because Missouri's a decent basketball team, better than South Carolina, better than Ole Miss this year probably. So they're a decent kind of on the fringe NCAA tournament team outside looking in. But then you have LSU at home, which you're going to be favored by 7, 8, 9 points in that game. So Saturday in the Moody Center is a huge game for Sean Miller, because what you want to do is look at the next three and say, okay, win 2. And if you can get 2 in the next 3, that's a win. Because then you're sitting at 7-6 in SEC play. That next gauntlet is a really difficult one for Texas. They need to be 7-6 going into that gauntlet. So if things don't go well, they have Oklahoma at home at the end, and that can get them to 8-10 if that's where it needs to be, or 9-9. We'll see what happens. But it's a huge game coming up in Moody Saturday for sure.
To your point, Jerry, starting February 21st at Georgia, then Florida at home, and then at Texas A&M. So, yeah, that's 3 really tough games.
And at Arkansas, Jeff.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. Yes, you do have to go to Fayetteville and play Cal teams. That's 4 really tough ones in a row before you end it with Oklahoma back at Moody at the end of the regular season. And Jerry, this a win over Oklahoma is included in this stretch where they've won 3 of 4. Didn't play well against South Carolina, but at this point, doesn't matter what it looks like. You just got the win. And there's 2 things, Jerry, coming out of that game that I really want to see on Saturday. One, can your bench continue to produce? Simeon Wilcher's probably played back-to-back the best 2 games he's played as a Longhorn. Kendall Weaver's giving you good minutes off the bench. Lassina Traore scored 5 points in that South Carolina win. All 5 of them were from the foul line. So props to him. And Sean Miller publicly, and I know he's done it privately, he challenged Modest Wokatitis. He challenged Modest after the South Carolina game because he didn't play well. He was in foul trouble most of the night. So I want to see, Jerry, what kind of version of Modest we get against Ole Miss.
Yeah, and Jordan Pope's had a couple of less than Jordan Pope-like games, who's been a consistent double-figure scorer in SEC play now for almost 2 years. And so Sean pretty much, he challenged those guys. That's what, hey, it's not like he didn't do it before the press conference. Right. And that's Sean Miller fighting, scrapping and clawing to maximize this basketball team, because he knows now that they have a chance to get in the tournament. And if they can just get all these guys firing. But the one thing I want to say about basketball is like when Tremont Mark went through a couple of games where he wasn't scoring well, people are like, oh, find the bench, get somebody else. Man, it's like basketball just doesn't work that way. Like everybody's not going to score 15 or 20 every night unless you're the go-to guy, the go-to scorers on a team. I mean, there's some ebbs and flows. There's going to be a couple of games where 23-foot shots don't fall. And now you can't let it carry over to everything else. Or maybe a team does a great job scouting you. You don't get to your spots in the mid-range with as much fluidity and creates tougher contested shots. So, look, I think Jordan Pope's going to have a couple of big games down the stretch for Texas. He always has. I think Matas is and I said this on Coffee and Football Wednesday. I said, one thing I don't want, Jeff, is for Dalen Swain and Matas, when you look up, you're saying, golly, those guys had unbelievable seasons, because that means you might not get them back. I mean, that's the reality. You want these guys to be a process. If Matas obviously shows up the next 7 games of SEC play and averages 1 foul a game and he averages 18 and 11, what happens? I'm not saying he's going in the NBA draft, but what I am saying is he's progressed a lot more than you would think, and he's already progressed from his freshman year. Great deal. But then what happens? Does somebody come in and throw $4.5-5 million NIL at him because they see he's an elite center in college basketball, because he's a really good player now, and he can bring, like, that's where you get into trouble with all this. I want this to be gradual. Like, Swain's almost gotten too good too fast for me. Right. Because when these guys signed, I was like, oh man, get to have both of these guys 2 years. What happens that in Sean Miller's second year? But Swain, that's up in the air. I mean, when you're averaging 20-7 or 20-8 and 3.5 assists in SEC play, you're going to show up in mock drafts when you're 6'8", 220. You're going to show up in mock drafts in the first round when you start taking and making contested threes over SEC length, which you've never done in your college career. You're going to start to shoot up draft boards. I mean, so you want some of these guys to be gradual, while still having success as a team. And if both those guys get too good too fast, then that creates some issues you didn't want in a weird way.
Yeah, Jerry, to your point, as we wrap this up about Dalen Swain, was added to the Julius Erving Award midseason top 10 this week. Over his last 5 games, going into the Ole Miss game, 25 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 2.4 steals, back-to-back double-doubles, and he's gone for 20 in 5 of his last 10 games. Jerry, that dog will hunt, as my father used to say.
Yeah, and that's on the road in the SEC. That's at home in the SEC. That's against other draft picks in the SEC. And there's NBA scouts in every building. And there's a reason he's starting to move up into these mock drafts, and he's appearing late first and early seconds when he wasn't 15 games ago. That's because these guys that do mock drafts are talking to NBA scouts, and they're saying, hey, this guy's draft stock's on the rise big time. And that's why you start climbing in these mock drafts. It's coming from the NBA scouts.
I will note the 34 he had against Mississippi State. He fouled out with a couple of minutes left in regulation and didn't play in overtime. So that could have easily been a 40-plus point game.
And that was 34-14. I mean, that could have been 40-17 from your small forward who was playing undersized 4 a lot in the SEC. But he's doing it well. Again, traffic rebounds against 6'10 guys, handling the ball against 6'6 wings, and creating for others. He is the playmaker for this Texas team. At 6'8", 220.
Yep.
There aren't a lot of those guys. Keyshawn Hall can go get you 22. He's a great natural scorer. But if you ask him to do everything else, he can't even do everything else. And he's a great scorer. Dalen Swain is doing a hell of a lot for this team. And I think Sean Miller's spot on. He means more to his team in the SEC than any other player.
Jerry, you mentioned Jordan Pope and the outgoing messages. Sean Miller pointed out part of his challenge to Jordan Pope. He has never been a part of a team that's won 3 conference games in a row, and Texas has a chance to do that after beating Oklahoma, South Carolina. We'll see if they can get Ole Miss on Saturday. And again, shout out to Vic Schaefer and the Texas women. Always good to be the Kim Mulkey coach team. Even better when it's a top 5 Kim Mulkey coach team.
Did she not look like a bullfighter with that outfit on last night, Jeff?
You know, I when I covered Kim at Baylor, the outfits were not as let's say flamboyant back then as they are now. She's up the ante a little bit, to say the least. Jerry, thanks for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Also, shameless plug, if you haven't checked it out, make sure you check out the interview Jerry and I did earlier this week with Sean Miller. That's here on the channel. Talked about Dalen Swain, talked about modest defense, a lot of fun stuff talking with Sean Miller. That was on the eve of the South Carolina win. For Jerry, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time.